Ladies and gentlemen, friends of the community show, and viewers of the Civic Space TV, welcome to this episode of the community show. My name is Kidega Moses, and I'm the moderator for this conversation. Well, like I've always told you, that the community show is a show that has discussions around ideas that affect the community directly. And today, we are going to have a very interesting conversation around one of the most pertinent issues around our globe, but also in our communities directly. The topic, just to phrase it to you directly, is that we are going to look at digital rights in respect or in light of emerging technologies. It is true that the world is continuously becoming a digital era. We are living in the information age. That is very true. So we are here to assess that this information age, this digitalization, comes with its advantages, but also some disadvantages that tag along with it. We also know that government has gone ahead to digitalize most of its social services. Most of its information is now available online. But still, we know that there is a tax attached, a high tax, if you may wish to say, attached on data. So we are here to evaluate digitalization and technology in its broad aspect. And to enable us understand this conversation, I'm joined by a panel of 4 young and well-read colleagues of mine, which I will take this opportunity to introduce. The first and foremost is my comrade and good friend, Ndugu Mwanje Samuel. Samuel is a graduate of software engineering from Makerere University. He joins us on the community show as a first-timer. Comrade Samuel, you're most welcome. Please turn on your microphone and video and say hello to our viewers.
Thank you, Moderator Ndugu Moses. Hello, everyone. To all the viewers of Civic Space TV, we are glad to have you on this community show, and I'm glad to be part of the same this afternoon. Thank you, Moses.
Thank you very much, Ndugu Mwanje. That is my comrade and very good friend. On the panel is a youth leader all the way from Abim district. For those of you who don't know Abim district, it is found in Karamoja. And this is the youth chairperson of the district of Abim by the names of Ayen Earnest. Ayen, you're most welcome to this show. We are glad to have you. And please feel free to say hello to our viewers in this conversation.
Thank you very much, my brother Moses, and my friends who have joined us for this conversation. I'm happy to be on the show today, share my thoughts and my views with my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ndugu Ernest. Finally, is a friend and brother of mine. We come from the same district or city by the names of Olara Daniel. Olara is a member of the East African Youth Parliament. I also know that he is the speaker of the Northern Region Youth Parliament. The Youth Parliament is a non-government organization that brings together young people to encourage debate and critical thinking. Ndugu Olara, you're most welcome to this show. Please feel free to say hello to us and tell us how Gulu City is.
Moses Kidega. It is nice to be on the show. I'm very much looking forward to having a bit, especially on these issues. Gulu City is better, okay?
Yes, thank you, Olara. If I've heard you well, you've said that everything is okay. Everything is okay in Gulu City except your network. Your network is not okay, my brother. So you might need to work on that. You might need to substantiate your argument of saying that everything is okay by having an okay network this afternoon. Olara, just try to use the next 2 minutes to find better network as we begin the conversation. So let me begin with you, Ndugu Mwanje. Ndugu Mwanje, I know that you're a software engineer by training. You're a graduate of Makerere University, and I believe you have had a fair share of knowledge in terms of appreciating digitalization, technology, and other things that surround the same aspect. So to you, my question and first question would be that as a country, do you think we are moving towards digitalization? If yes, what progress have we made in that regard? Are we seeing, for example, more masts being set up by telecommunication companies to enable network and proper network to be accessed in all areas of the country, be it remote or be it developed or urban? Do you think the telecommunication services have done enough to extend digital services to even the lowest Uganda in the village of Akogoro, where I come from? because as you've seen, my friend Olara is already having issues with this network. So do you think, yes, whereas the world as a globe is moving towards digitalization, do you think as a country, we are moving at the same pace with the world, or we are lagging behind and something needs to be done about it? So Ndugu Mwanje, start us off.
Thank you, Comrade Kidega, for that wonderful question. Straight away to begin, I must say that we are not where we used to be, though we are not where we are supposed to be, to answer your question directly. I want to appreciate the government of this country for the efforts invested into digitalizing our country and getting us to where we are supposed to be, but also at the same note to challenge it at some point that as much as there is something that has been done, more still needs to be worked on. For sure, Ndugu Kidega, I must inform you and the viewers that we are moving in an information age. We can no longer deny that fact. Today, the greatest asset we have as the globe is information. And you see, the way to disseminate this information, therefore, has to be simplified to the least detail, to the least nitty-gritty. So as a government, yes, I feel like we have done something. For example, I want to commend the good works of organizations like NITA under the organization of the government. I want to commend the Ministry of ICT. But at the same point, I want to let our viewers know and the government that their center of direction is not to the dissemination of information. Yes, we are embracing the digitalization, but it seems the focus is being put onto other things. For example, I'll give you an example, Comrade Kidega. Up to date, we are still having our Facebook shut off from Uganda. This is something I want to start off straight away because to date, it bothers me. And I wonder how do companies, how do organizations like UCC advise on such matters? Having Facebook closed is one of the things that disturb me to date. And I wonder what is the incense towards this? So I feel like, Ndugu Kidega, we have a problem where we have mixed a lot of politics into the digitalization. This I must assert without fear of contradiction. So we have a lot of political affiliations being asserted onto this. Yet we must accept the fact that media and politics work in tandem. They work closely. There's no way you can separate them. So one Republican president of the French Empire said that, and I quote him, I want to quote him directly, he said that politics is serious a matter to be left to only politicians. So therefore, there has to be a way of how the public, of how the non-politicians get engaged into these matters, and that can only be, or that can only happen with the media. So I call upon our politicians and the government to understand that there is no way the line between politics and media is thin. So therefore, it is very dangerous and it is doing us a disfavor as a country to mix these two matters and to try to, infringe on the other thereof. So I'll tell you that, yes, the government has done something. I hear the moves to have internet installed around the country, starting with, of course, Kampala. I am very sorry for Ndugu Olara because I think they might take a lot of time to get to him. And these are the things we want to settle. You get the point. Because we need to have information disseminated fully to everyone. And of course, I want to implore the viewers, those who are in authority to handle this, to have this digitalization move on very well. So there's some work that is being done, but much more still needs to be done. Thank you, Comrade.
Thank you very much, Ndugu Mwanje. I can say without fear of contradiction that you still have your political touch and leadership touch in place. For the benefit of our viewers, Mwanje was a GRC at the School of Computing and Information Technology at Makerere University, where he was my leader. So I was glad to follow you back then in school. And thank you for those very important submissions. Ndugu Ayen, let's just pick it from where Mwanje has ended. He says, yes, something has been done, but much more needs to be done. And he brought in a very important aspect that, and this, let me expand on it. Many of our young people do businesses online because they cannot afford to pay rent in these very expensive arcades in Kampala or in these cosmopolitan areas or in the city center. They can't afford to pay this rent. So their other option is to run their businesses online. But like Mwanje has said, platforms like Facebook, which have been a very important medium for them to carry out business, to transact, remain closed up to today. So as a youth leader, this should concern you because you're at the helm of the youth of Abim district. I want to believe that if the youth of Abim district are to be at the same development pace with the youth of not only Uganda, but the youth of the globe at large, we must be able to embrace technology with all its advantages. So as a youth leader, do you think something is missing? And if so, what is this missing link? And you could please expand on it. So on to you, Ndugayen.
Thank you very much, my brother Kidega, for that. I also want to thank my brother Samuel for his nice submission. I want to start from what you've just told me, Moses. You see, we are living in a century where information is very critical. And therefore, when we have technology at our disposal like this, we need to use it very importantly because the government needs to understand, like in our case of Uganda with the restriction on Facebook, it's a big setback for especially the young people. When you see countries that are progressing very well, they have got to understand that technology has a lot to contribute to their GDP. Now, if we have a big population of the young people that are unemployed, and people seek to create business, online businesses, but still we have a restriction on businesses, people want to transact through Facebook. This sets us back economically. We need to understand that, first of all, technology contributes a big deal to other countries' GDP. Therefore, if you lock out a big population of the young people, especially in the context of Uganda, you are locking out a generation that should contribute to the GDP. In Uganda, first of all, the internet penetration is very low. Like for my case in Karamoja, it is only in the few town councils that you find there is internet. And therefore, some people cannot do business and they have contributed. When you have a big number of people doing business online, you are contributing huge sums of money for the government. But when you lock out these things, I think you tend to lock out the potential of the young people. I think the intention is what must be interrogated. What is the intention of the government locking out young people from the businesses that they're supposed to be doing online? I think therefore that the government needs to know that they should not look at, I think maybe they should look at maybe the productivity of the young people who are engaged in business online, how much they contribute to this and how best can the government get from this. Because actually they can use this as a measure of reducing unemployment. Back to you, Comrade Kidega.
Yes, thank you very much, Ndugayen. I will definitely come back to you. Someone just joined us by the name of Doreen. Doreen, are you joining as Rachael Asasiira? Just to confirm that you're one of our panelists. I am seeing Doreen. Doreen, please unmute your microphone and say hello to us. Oh, so it is Asasiira Rachael who has joined us. Okay, Rachael, good morning. How are you? All right, kindly turn on your video so that our other panelists and our viewers can see.
Hello, how are you? Kidega.
Yes. Oh, yes, I can see. Yes, I can see you look very sharp this morning. Many thanks for joining us.
Welcome.
All right. I want to come to you shortly, but in the meantime, I have to tell you that your network is shaky. So as I go to Ndugu Olara to ask him my next question, please this time to stabilize your network. Maybe you could try to move aside a little bit. Thank you.
Okay.
Ndugu Olara, you join us all the way from Gulu City. And like I've informed my viewers already, you are a teacher by profession, but also you are a youth leader. I know that you work with the Nile Media Group. So now my question to you is, with the emerging digital era, has your work as someone who works with Nile Media Group been made easier? Or you want to agree with what our
Nile Media Group with the emerging technologies that's coming up? The Nile Media Group is one of the digitalized systems of giving out information to the public, but also relaying some most important things, especially issues that affect the people around us. It has not been a smooth run, and it is not a smooth run in the digitalization of Uganda. So I am to put into a person as a teacher. Digital rights are, so we think that it should allow people to access, use, and create, and to publish digital media in a free language. Well, there are the electronic devices that help in communication networks. Now, in Uganda, needless to mention, the government has been a little infringent on a number of rights of people to access digital information. Right now, as I speak, the Parliament of Uganda has granted the Honorable MP Mohamed Nsereko a leave so that he aims at pushing for the amendment of the Computer Misuse Act of 2011. According to Honorable Mohamed Nsereko, he says that these digital rights somehow affect the personality of a person, but also affects the security of the nation. Now, he was speaking in reference to a scenario that happened to one of Uganda's digital rights players in the names of Fred Lumbuye, who personally attacked him as one of the people in the government. Now, according to him, he thinks that the right to access digital information needs to be controlled by the government. And I think as a person, as a player in the media world, in the digital world, I think somehow government tends to manipulate some of these acts and laws in order to infringe on the rights of the people to access such information. Comrade Kidega and members listening to us, I think the laws that govern digital rights in Uganda needs to be well scrutinized. In this case, I am speaking about the Computer Misuse Act of 2011. You realize if you critically read through this act, there are some words which are defined. It's like a leverage, words like attacking. These words are not clearly defined. That makes it very easy to interpret own ways. And sometimes they interpret it to benefit themselves. I will give way back examples of people who used the digital or the media to disseminate information or to express their views. For example, in 2019, the then Joseph Kabileta, who is an economist, used his Facebook account to express his views on a number of issues. He was arrested. The ego, which is an online information dissemination, they were scrutinized by issue of content that leak into the media. Now, these were done, the misinterpretation of things like the Misuse Act, the misinterpretation of sections 25 and 24 of the Act that talks about cyber harassment and offensive communication. Now, in a nutshell, as I summarize, I think somehow the government in itself tends to look at digital rights as a political risk. You know, many times in Africa, most governments tend to grasp or grip their hold onto power, and they tend to eliminate a number of risks that come onto their power. And I think by use of such certain of these laws, we realize that they tend to cover up people's rights to access information through the digital. We've seen a lot of CCTV set up in Kampala, even here in Gulu. These are manipulation of people's rights. Recently, we saw SIM card re-registrations. We've seen surveillance done on telecommunication companies. These are people who use the media. These are people who give information. But the government is coming ahead to make a surveillance, to control, or to use a better word, the government is trying to censor the whole rights of the people, which, by the way, Comrade Kidega, infringes on the Human Rights Declaration of the Declaration of Human Rights. And I think that is one of the biggest challenges that the media and the people who use the media face right now. Lastly, Comrade Kidega, talk about the internet space. We've had a number of issues, like we have the tax regime on data, okay? Recently, before it was removed, we had the over the tax, the OTT tax, which was there. And now we have the tax on data. Now, the internet space, it tends to reduce the space at which media is disseminated in a way. And I think as a player in the media, as a person who consumes this information that comes from the media, in one way or another, it is not going to be easy moving forward, these things happening, as long as the technology still goes ahead. Comrade Kidega, I would like to end here.
Yes, thank you very much, Olara. I'm going to ask you to stay right there because I have a follow-up question for you. Comrade Olara, I'll tell you that government has a social contract with its people. And this social contract is anchored on Article 1 of our Constitution. Article 1 lays the foundation for the other articles of the Constitution under which government establishes a contract with its people. And I'll tell you that government has a responsibility to its people to provide social services, services of healthcare, education, infrastructure, among other social services. But also government has a duty to its citizens to offer security and protection. So when we see citizens or Ugandans being murdered and police having challenges with investigation, and then government sets up CCTV cameras to try and monitor and surveil the community, I think that is being done in good faith. I think it's being done to be able to curtail and reduce crime in the country. And mind you, this was approved by Parliament. The CCTV cameras that we see were approved by Parliament in a bid to curb insecurity and to curtail crime in the country. Also, the aspect of SIM card registration. You know that SIM cards in the past have been used to abate crime. People, because they steal phones from within the city center, they get the SIM cards and use those SIM cards to commit crime. So if government is saying that every SIM card must have a unique identification attached to a given citizen of the country, I think it's only trying to prevent crime and to curtail security, but also to have a clear database of its citizenry. So don't you think it is unfair to say that government, in its bid to curtail insecurity, because I mean, life is a give and take. You cannot have it always. You cannot want government to provide you with maximum security, but at the same time, when government is trying to give you this security, again, you want to impede the effort. So I see a contradiction. Do you want to respond to that before I go to Rachael?
Yeah, yes, definitely. About the social contract theory, you see, Comrade Kidega, social contract theory exists because people put the government in power, okay? Now, they give the powers to protect them, to provide social services to the government. But the same social contract theory also gives the government a responsibility, a task that they are able to account to the people who gave them the powers. Now, this accountability does not come entirely only on finances. We've seen accountability of the lives of people. Many times, Comrade, and the people listening to us this afternoon, we think that government does not entirely account for the lives of people lost in the pursuit of such social contract theory. To give you an example, we've seen a number of torture being done. We've seen a number of people die through the CCTVs. I mean, trying to follow up what happens on the CCTVs. We think it's right that government is doing its work, it's doing its the contract that the people gave them to protect them. But we also think that there are a number of lives lost that cannot be accounted for in the process. Now, comrade, this brings me to talk about something of digital rights in relations to human rights, okay? We believe that digital rights, that people are able to access information freely. As I recap on the 1995 Constitution, Article 41, which talks about access to information, and Article 29, which talks about freedom of expression, and also the Articles of 24 and 25 of the Computer and Digital Act. Now, these all have a lot of relations to human rights. My reason of bringing the CCTVs and the government works is not to caution the government, okay? I am applauding the government for their active role in protecting the citizens, for their active role in keeping the security of the country through this digitalization. Also raising alarm that in the government social contract theory, we think that there are certain rights which are being stepped on, okay? And we think this is going far ahead than it is expected. And we think there is a political relations already in the rights, the digital rights of the citizenry, and also my...
Okay, Olara, thank you very much. Many thanks for that submission. Comrade Rachael Asasiira, I am coming to you next. But before I do that, let me take this opportunity to introduce you to our viewers. Our fourth panelist is a comrade of ours and a friend by the names Asasiira Rachael. Rachael has a great track record of leadership. She has been a leader at the Uganda National Students Association. She's equally a leader in the Mbarara District Youth Council. She's also a student of social sciences at Chambogo University. Rachael joins us as a first timer, and Rachael, we welcome you once again. Okay, thank you. So Rachael, my question to you is that, and really it is a direct question, is that as a youth leader, but also as a student, we know that with the emergence of COVID-19, most of these academic programs have been taken online. I saw, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, Makerere University students were striking, and the basis of their strike was that why is Makerere University continuously having online classes, and yet, you know, the economy is open, but at the same time, students are paying functional fees. So if a student has to pay functional fees, the economy is open, but still have to incur data costs because they have to study online from home. So from a student perspective and youth leader perspective, do you agree with what our earlier speakers said, that the tax on data is still very high, and this is affecting youth in entrepreneurship, but also this is affecting students like you who now have to study online, you know, and pay all these high taxes. You know, you now cannot use Facebook to maybe share knowledge or, you know, to share information. So do you think something needs to be done about access to digital infrastructure, access to digital services, access to the internet? Do you think a gap exists, and what do you think, you know, could be done?
That and we think this is not favorable. It's a mistake, and even the law and rules we have do not investigate that what happens on the internet. For example, if you're to see these Makerere students, I think they're right, because due to the high taxes on that and what, then you start telling students are going to pay functional fees. I think it's not fair. Because, for example, we have even students who are in rural areas, like during the COVID lockdown and everything, and we couldn't access internet. And the internet connection was very poor, which caused very many problems for us as students because we couldn't. And it was a very common problem we had all over the country. And what happens on the internet, because they were not formulated, because the special framework, they are not formulated when these technologies were emerging, and every other day new technologies comes, and yet our flexibility is very low, and we do not adjust at the same pace. And therefore, there is that gap, and because of that gap, we are not able to enjoy our digital rights as students. This is something that we are supposed to be fully in. We embrace the digital, but due to lack of everything, I think we find ourselves down, and we are not able to enjoy our digital rights. But we are also not able to observe them. Perhaps sometimes we don't know what they are because we are just using the new space. So I think for the students, they are very much, they face a lot of difficulties, and I think it's not fair. The government should adjust and reduce on the taxes of data and everything. And then the university should also be able to reason with the students and scrap off that functional fee, since everything is done online. Yeah, that's for me. Thank you so
thank
much.
you. Rachel, just a follow-up question. Just stay on the line. I think earlier on this week, on Monday, I saw Makerere University signing an MOU with Stanbic Bank to provide laptops to students of Makerere University. I think this is a right step towards digitalization and encouraging e-learning. Now, I wonder if the case is the same at Kyambogo University. Has the Kyambogo University administration taken any steps to encourage maybe digitalization by providing students with laptops? So I'm saying, is the case the same at Kyambogo University, whereby has the Kyambogo University administration or council taken steps like the Makerere University leadership has done to provide students with laptops so that they can, become more effective in their education? So is Kyambogo making any steps towards supporting students in the digital era, or it is every man for his own?
For now, I'm not very sure about Kyambogo, because right now it's every man for his or her own. So I think we just need to be patient. Since it started with Makerere, maybe we just hope for Kyambogo to also do the same. We just hope the council also sits and do the same as Makerere, because it will be helping us in one way or the other, and we shall be glad for that. But for now, I don't think.
Thank you very much, Comrade Rachel. Let me come to you, Ndugu Mwanje. Mwanje, I know that you're a software engineer graduate from Makerere University. And as I was coming for this show this afternoon, I happened to read the course units that software engineers happen to study. And I got to understand that in your fourth year of study, you study something around software and ethics, software law and ethics, something like that, in your final year as you're being prepared to leave the university. And this brings me to the aspect that Comrade Olara hinted on earlier on, that digital rights are actually human rights. So as a software engineer, in your course of study, are you taught that digital rights are actually human rights, or all they tell you are ethics, be disciplined, respect the law, don't abuse your boss, So do you confirm, or do you conform to what Olara is saying about digital rights being human rights? Ndugu Mwanje, the floor is yours, please. Unmute your microphone and...
Thank you, Comrade Kidega. The course unit is actually IT law and ethics.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So when I come to the point that Comrade Olara made, you'll pardon me if the pronunciation of the name kind of was a little bit messy, but Comrade Daniel mentions a point that digital rights are actually human rights. And you see, of course, to some extent, I will concur with him, because a lot of things will rotate around human rights. But in my understanding of the subject, Comrade Kidega, I want to actually understand digitalization in a broader perspective. Yes, because every time we tend to direct the issue to politics and governance and stuff like that, that is when we get into the human rights part of it. I think Comrade Daniel comes from a point of how people use this information and how they disseminate it. But me, I want to look at the other point of the economy. You see, the economy and digitalization has nothing to do with human rights. For example, a person doing their business on Facebook and wakes up in the morning, advertises their products. I don't believe there is any human right. Maybe they are breaking or they are infringing on. For example, a student who wakes up in the morning and goes for a lecture on Zoom, but is being levied this heavy tax of 12% on data, yet they actually have to, sometimes get the money on mobile money, so there's a tax on mobile. Still incurring these high taxes, I don't think there is a human right here to be talked about. So I want to accept that this thing of digitalization in our country especially has to be embraced in a broader perspective. For example, yes, there are people who use the media space and the digitalization space for their political affairs. I do not have a problem with them, but that should not be used in the purposes of this country. That should not be used as a yardstick for others that use it for their economic purposes. So to some extent, I will concur with Comrade Daniel that digital rights is a human rights thing. There's a thin line between the two. But me, I want to embrace digitalization in a broader perspective compared to this. Because as a person who works every day in the information age, I must tell you without fear of contradiction that today the greatest asset you have is information. People are selling this information. People are trading information. Once you have information, you have a great product. So every time we get to see this issue politicized and, put into the context of governance, human rights, and so we tend to mix the issue, and at the end of the day, we end up in issues like Facebook being shut down. It is the greatest business platform for our youths that cannot afford the rent. For example, we end up having bans of, accounts on Twitter. I see every now and then this account is blocked, this one is done, this. A lot of things is happening. But the broader perspective is that we need to go digitalization. That is the broader perspective of the matter. So maybe we can always have a discussion of how we deal with the media space and the political space. But I want to believe that digitalization in terms of digital is a broader perspective compared to politics and media. Kidega.
Yes, thank you very much, Mwanje. Let me reserve my question that I have to ask you for a later time. Let me bring in Earnest. Earnest, hope you're still there with us. Earnest, earlier on, you mentioned that where you are in Abim, there's still some bit of insecurity. But this is more physical insecurity. But let me bring your mind to the aspect of digital security. It is true that the more we digitalize, the more we use these online platforms, is the more we give out our information. For example, Earnest, if you used an Uber from Abim to maybe go to Moroto, you've given this Uber application, this Uber server, your information. So if someone wants to do any harm to you, Earnest, they know that, oh, Earnest used an Uber, he moved from Kotido to Abim. So they know that Earnest at this particular point in time is in Abim, okay? Look at us who use Google Maps, for example, okay? You're trying to navigate, maybe you're moving from Mwanje to maybe Kampala in the city center, and you're trying to navigate through. At times you're forced to use Google Maps. And in that process, you're giving out your information. You're giving Google Maps and Google at large your current pin location. So if someone really wants to harm you or wants to do any danger to you, it is very easy because your information is out there. Where you are at a given point in time, it's all out there. We have seen young people, each time they have gone for maybe to have lunch in a restaurant, they take a video and post, I am now at Serena. So do you think that, yes, whereas digitalization is good, all these online services are good, they help us in efficiency, in transport and all this, they are good. But don't you think that to some extent they also impede our privacy and could affect our security?
Thank you very much, comrade, for that question. I wanted to say that information is something that can be got at any place. If someone needs to arm you, someone does not need to get your information from Uber or any other place that you're going to leave your information. That can happen. Whereas we want to look at the negative, maybe the negative part of giving our information, why don't you think about the negative part of information and ask things like, what will you use this information we are giving for positively? So you need to see what can happen without technology can actually happen with technology. The good things can come with technology and the bad things can come with technology. So we must attach a lot of importance to the good things that come with technology rather than looking more to issues that the negative parts that come with technology. I know that privacy is one thing that we need to deal with very critically, but it's also very important. Once we have detailed information with some people, it is very easy to handle and help us. For example, if something happened to you on an Uber or an accident, it is very easy for them to trace and follow up where this person came from and where this person is going. And therefore, in case of any treatment, it is easy. But with digitalization, my brother, I want us to know that in one way or the other, it becomes risky. For example, in our situation where we have people being kidnapped with drones, I know it is very easy for us to be followed. But I think that is where now we come in to understand the parts of rights when it comes to the human part, the rights that my brother Daniel was talking about. That is where we need to understand that now, as well as we have this digitalization, the government must understand that it must protect its people even when they are putting the camera somewhere, because that is also one other way of getting information about the people from the environment. So I think as much as we look at the negatives of it, we would love to attach a lot of positives to what comes with digitalization in terms of privacy and everything that attaches to that.
Yes, thank you very much, Earnest, and thank you for encouraging us to be optimistic rather than being pessimistic. We should look more to the positives that come with digitalization than focusing on the negatives. Thank you for that submission. Olara, you're next on the line. And my question is to you, is something that you brought earlier on, that you did hint on, the issue of cyber harassment and offensive communication, and the issue of rights. We know that, yes, as human beings or as people of Uganda, we have rights, okay? We have a right to own a Twitter account, we have a right to communicate on Twitter, but at times we misuse some of these rights, okay? That whereas you have a right to, tweet or to Facebook, you don't have a right to insult me, okay? And that is where the offensive communication comes in. That's where the cyber harassment comes in. So my question to you is that, do you think that, yes, whereas digital rights are important, that much we all agree that we must have a right to own a Twitter account and no one should be blocked. So sorry, no one's account should be, maybe blocked or be, withdrawn from them. We have a right to own a smartphone. But if we use these digital gadgets or digital infrastructure to impede on the rights of others, then it becomes a problem. Because yes, you did mention on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, I agree, but I also want to say that in our pursuit to exercise our rights, our fundamental human rights, we shouldn't impede on the rights of others. So now my question to you directly is that, do you think at times young people or people in general, in their pursuit to pursue or to espouse their digital rights, they end up infringing on the rights of others? Okay. Rachel, let me come to you. I hope your network is not like that of Daniel. So Rachel, my question to you is that still around, of course, digitalization, we have seen that government has privatized most of these telecommunication services. The biggest telecommunication service provider in Uganda, the MTNs and the Airtels, are actually private players. They are not government institutions. So my question to you is that, what way do you think we should go in terms of fostering digitalization? Do you think government should hold more authority in terms of setting up infrastructure, setting up routers, setting up boosters, setting up all this telecommunication infrastructure? Or do you think that it is okay for the private sector to dominate this field? Because for them, of course, they are profit oriented, so they look more towards the profit. So they will, attach a cost to almost everything, okay? Unlike if it is government, we could say maybe with the government, we can have subsidized telecommunication services. But with the private sector, there's nothing like subsidization. They are profit oriented, all they care about is making money. So which of the two options do you think works best for a country like Uganda that is still, according to World Bank, a developing country? Do you think we should shift some of these social services like telecommunication to the private sector, or the government should continue to shoulder this responsibility? Rachael, Asasiira.
I think it should be left to the private sector, because we have seen a lot with the government. For example, a lot of conflicts have come up and you don't know what steps, where, for example, there is a quotation on the right of privacy. If you're operating on the internet, whether YouTube, whether email, whether social what, where is the line? Like, how do I get to protect my privacy? Because of the normal world, privacy is granted. People are not expected to enter my private space. For example, we have seen many cases with the government, people complaining, the government just goes into your account, gets the information, then the next thing is going to prison. So we have seen very many things with the government. So I think all these internet things like MTN, all those things, they should be left private, because we just need the privacy. And we bring in the government, and that means everything will be. So how do I get to protect you? We just need that privacy. We think like you have to think, how do I get to protect my privacy? Because in the normal world, privacy is granted. People are not expected to enter my private space.
Yes.
But with online is that particular people, for example, host countries, technology can be able to tap into your social media platforms, get to know if you are not reading. There is something called wiretapping. So you find out that due to what we have been facing, for example, if you're to see the Stella Nyanzis, the Kakwezis, you see that these things, the government takes things serious, and this is not good. So I think with technology, what telecommunication services should be left to private sectors, not the government, because of the privacy things we have been facing as a country. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rachael. I must inform you that, yes, I am glad that the government agrees with your view, because the government of Uganda proudly boasts of saying that our economy is a private sector-led economy. So the government of Uganda agrees with your analogy that some of these social services should be left in the hands of private citizens. Of course, that comes with its disadvantages, because like I said, private citizens care about profit. Private players care more about profit margins, and they are more profit oriented. So that comes, at a cost, because this impedes social services. Anyway, we shall look at that slightly later on. So Olara, are you back with us, or I can continue with the panelists who are here? I think Olara is not here with us. Mwanje, Samuel, let me come to you right away. Rachael brought in a very important aspect, which is the access to information. And I want to agree with her, because when you look at Facebook is having, I think the court case is still ongoing, whereby Facebook was accused of mining data, okay, of selling people's information to maybe governments and to security agencies, and were taken to court, okay? So it is clear that data has become a business, okay? For us, we go on Facebook, we tell them, because they ask you for so many things, your date of birth, where you stay, your country, so many things, they ask you for so many things, your friends, your where you work, your hobbies. So they literally know everything about you because you've given them the information. And then they are at disposal to make money out of it, sell it to governments for security purposes and other things. So my question then to you is that how best do you think we can strike a balance? Yes, we use these digital services, but also the people who we give this information do not misuse this information. Is it possible for us to achieve that? That you give Facebook your information, but you also stop Facebook from using your information in the way it wants? Is that possible? Yes, Mwanje Samuel, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Comrade Kidega. I must tell you that this is a transition. If we shall discuss this concept of digitalization, we need to understand that it is a transition. I'll give you a simple analogy. Every time there is a transition, there are things that are at stake at the moment until we get to a level where we have now had a lot of experiences and we can now come to a common point. So the issue of digitalization, as it happens now, it is a transition. We are transiting from a certain age of information dissemination to another age of information dissemination. For example, I'll tell you, for purposes, in 2009, I remember that is the year I held my first capability phone by that time. And by that time, the best means of communication were through SMS. And by that time, someone who had loaded like 1,000 SMS would be the greatest around the gang, because you do send as many messages as you can wish. Now we are not in that era. So we are moving from one era to another era. So every time you're handling a transition, you must put into consideration that it is always a relative decision. So as much as we have issues of court cases, like for Facebook, like you mentioned, as much as we have issues like the one that has been happening with Kakwenza, the one that happened with Stella Nyanzi, we must understand that this is a relative transition. Therefore, we need to handle it in relative opinions. By relativity, I mean it is an issue of weighing. So you weigh, where are the advantages lying most and what are the disadvantages? Then you must also embrace the fact that if the advantages are more in the case as we speak, therefore get to the advantages and then find solutions slowly for the disadvantages. I'll tell you for a fact. What if we think about finding a common body like the UN? I'm giving a body like the UN, but now this body is just being established to handle these companies that are dealing in digitalization. So we have a unifying body that handles these companies, and it sets up common conventions that these companies and organizations should establish. These are things we need to think about in the future. But as we speak now, we are still embracing the baby's digitalization. So you don't know whether they like milk. You don't know whether when they take milk, they get this kind of sickness. These are a lot of questions that are still in play. Therefore, I must say that around the globe, yes, some countries were there before us, but we are still learning this thing. And until we have all the commonalities around, until we have had some good experience around this, then that is when we can come up with the suggestions like the one I've mentioned to try to curb some of these inconveniences, especially when it comes to privacy. Because as much as you're saying that I can use a Uber, you see, a Uber you just mentioned simply a snippet of what digitalization is. So are you also telling me that people shouldn't keep their money in banks, for example? Because even in banks, we give our information. So you see that we are in a position where we have to take a relative position. The same government that accuses people of harassing it via social media is the same government that uses social media for intelligence purposes. So you see that we are having a thin line about this. So that's why I'm saying it is a relative decision. Therefore, in my opinion, I think let us first accept that we have a baby. let us have this baby grow within us, within our hands, and then we get to understand that when this baby sleeps at 9, maybe they wake up at 9 p.m., then they wake up at 5. So if I want them to wake up at 6, then let me make them wake up at 10. So that's how we shall handle this. So in my opinion, when I look at digitalization, I must tell you, comrade, and the viewers, that it is a mystery. Like someone who has gone to church, today we'll go to this church, they will read the scripture and interpret it in another way. You go to another church, they will interpret the same scripture in a different way. Because the Bible was the first source of information we have. It is the first book we have. It contains information. So therefore, every time you're dealing with information, accept to have different views, accept to have relativity in perception, relativity in decision making. So I think we need to absorb that spirit of relativity into this. So as we cut one edge this side, we must also understand that there is this. Until we learn how the baby moves and grows, then we can have more decisions of how to get into these concerns. Thank you, comrade.
Yes, thank you very much, Mwanje. I now call upon us to give us our final remarks. I can see Rachael has left the show, and also Olara, I think the network is having issues. So Earnest, you have 3 minutes. You can give us a way forward and your concluding remarks. Then I'll come to you, Mwanje. Equally, you will use 3 minutes. So Earnest, beginning with you. Okay, Mwanje, let me begin with you, since for you are tayari, you're ready. So Mwanje, just use 3 minutes to give us your way forwards and your last words on the show.
Yeah, I will contextualize the point to our country. And I would like to quote Bob Edward. Bob Edward said that if you interviewed 1,000 politicians about whether the media is too soft or too hard, you will have 999 say it is too hard. So every time we tend to look at digitalization from a political point of view, we shall always accept this fire. And at the end of the day, we shall tend to lose the issue and to lose the point in this. So it is my greatest appeal to all the decision makers and all the players in our country, especially when it comes to digitalization, the NITA, the Ministry of ICT, to try to limit. I know it is not controllable, but to try to limit the greatest political affiliation to this matter of digitalization. Let us try to embrace it as something that is going to move and influence not only the political space, but also the economic and social space for the better well-being of our country. So I call upon all these organizations, UCC and all other organizations, to make sure that they limit the political involvement into some of these decisions, especially when it comes to digitalization. Thank you, Comrade Kidega, and thank you, the viewers, for watching us this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Comrade Ayen. I can see your back, but before you left us, we are trying to call upon you to give us your way forwards and concluding remarks. So just unmute your microphone and also show us your video. Then you can give us your last words, recommendations, and way forward.
Thank you very much, my brother Moses. I want to say that it has been a beautiful conversation with my friend Samuel, with you and Rachael. I only want to say that digitalization is a big deal in the country for now and for the foreseeable future. That the government must ensure that as a country, we must ensure that there is penetration of internet so that everyone gets on board. I know there is a very big population of young people and also the older people that have been left out because we don't have enough internet penetration so that people use these platforms very well. And I would only say a few things. One, that policies that encourage competition among service providers must be enhanced so that we have competition in this field, so that we have the best of connectivity in the area, because I heard Rachael saying that we should give it to the private sector. Imagine if we gave them with a lot of competition, therefore we would get the best of the services we would get. And then also we need to have free internet to low-income citizens. We, like a place where I come from, people cannot afford that data with a lot of with that high price. But when they are given at a low, when they are given for free, imagine how a number of people that would give space to participate in this digital era, and the contribution that they are going to make socially, economically, and politically. And then also regulations that allow for low cost energy solutions to penetrate to even areas with that are hard to reach. I think when we all work in these areas, I think what we are talking about will become a reality. But like we all said, our major reason for engaging in such a discussion is to ensure that at least 1 or 2 points are picked from our discussion. But otherwise, Moses, I thank you for bringing us on board. We would love to have other more discussions like this.
Yes, thank you very much, Earnest. So, Olara, my question to you is that could you speak to the role of these regulating institutions? For example, the Uganda Communications Commission, that is one. Two, the Ministry of ICT. Do you think these institutions are doing enough to regulate the players in the digital field, or they are not doing so much, but that to just favor one player at the disadvantage of the other? So speak to the role of regulating institutions like UCC and Ministry of ICT. Olara, can you still hear us? Olara, we cannot hear you at all. Rachel, are you there?
Yes.
Yes, Rachel, just give us your way forwards and concluding remarks. Rachel, please go ahead. The floor is yours, Rachel. Give us your way forwards and concluding remarks.
As I conclude, I will still emphasize that the new space and the legal framework we have, and even the law and rules we have, do not investigate that what happens on the internet, because they were not formulated when these technologies were emerging. And every other day, new technologies come, and yet our accessibility is very low, and we do not adjust at the same pace. And therefore, there is no that gap. And because of that, we are not able to enjoy our digital rights, but we are also not able to observe them. Perhaps sometimes we don't know what they are, because we are just using this new space. I think we just have the government has to just give us some more time to learn how to use this space, because for now, that's how I conclude.
Okay, thank you very much. Olara, Daniel, clearly your network has let you down. And I believe our viewers have missed out on hearing your concluding remarks and also hearing your final response. But well, as fate may have it, this brings us to the end of this conversation. I want to thank all of you, the panelists, Comrade Samuel Mwanje, Comrade Earnest Ayen, Comrade Rachael Asasiira, and Comrade Daniel Olara. Many thanks for joining us in this community show conversation. To our viewers, it's always a pleasure to have you. Please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Feel free to comment on the comment section and let us know what you think about this show. Let us know what topics you'd like us to talk about, because we are here to serve you better. From us to you, have a lovely week, and may God bless you. Bye-bye.